I'd want to start the section by first of all talking about business valuation. That is the angle in which I want to talk about. So when you talk about business valuation, we tend to look at valuing a business, first of all, using net assets. Valuing a business using net assets. We can determine the value of a company using net assets. And how do you determine the market value in that context? So the market value of the company is equal to the non-current assets plus the current assets minus the current liabilities. Now, this is the value of the company. If you want to determine the value per share, then that market value that we have gotten, which is the non-current asset plus the current assets minus the current liability, we have to divide it by the number of ordinary shares. Number of ordinary shares. Then that will give us the market value per share using net asset technique. The advantage of this technique is that because it is tied up to the financial statement, it is not difficult to compute. That is the first advantage. The second advantage is that it is an effective method in determining the valuation of a business if that company or that entity or if that group happens to be in a liquidation state. So if the company is in a liquidation state, the liquidator is just selling the assets and using the assets to defray the debts of the company. Then in that case, we are only interested in the tangible non-current assets. Goodwill in that perspective will be irrelevant. So in that context, the goodwill of the company, in fact, do you even have a goodwill at that point? If you think that you are liquidating, do you even have a goodwill? Sometimes at that point in time, goodwill is even zero. But even if goodwill is a positive figure, we need not to include goodwill in our computation. Because the net asset method of valuing assets is looking at only the tangible assets. The tangible assets. So that is what we are looking at over here in that context. If the examiner do not come out with any perspective to bring in any assumption, which they will not do, we look at the total non-current asset plus the current asset minus the current liability. You divide it by the number of ordinary shares to get the value per share. Then I move on to look at the next perspective. Determine the value of a company using the equity method. So using equity method. So using the equity method. So in using the equity method, the market value of a company is computed as the price per share times the number of ordinary shares. Times the number of ordinary shares. The price per share times the number of ordinary shares. Now over here, we are talking about the current share price times the number of ordinary shares. That is what we are looking at. Okay. We move on to the next perspective. Determine the market value of a company, this time around using the PE ratio methodology. So the market value of a company is the PE ratio times profit after tax. PE ratio times profit after tax. Another complicated one which normally comes up and also gets some students confused is that the PE ratio times earnings per share. Please do not get these two formulas confused, right? So if the examiner gives you the PE ratio, the price to earnings ratio, you can multiply the price to earnings ratio by the profit after tax. Then you get the market value of the company. Or you can multiply the PE ratio times earnings per share. That will also give the market value of the company. But in recent times, the examiner, with his evil side, has been testing the second side. So we need to be mindful. The first style has been tested some time back and he's fed up. He is just interested in recent time computing the market value of a company using the PE ratio times the earnings per share. Now, in another setting, The examiner, instead of giving the students the PE ratio so that they can use it to multiply the earnings per share, he decided to give the students earnings yield. And I've explained that the PE ratio is equal to 1 over earnings yield. The inverse of the earnings yield will give you PE ratio. So if you want to determine the market value of the company using the PE ratio methodology, and the examiner has not given you the PE ratio, but he has given you the earnings yield, then the inverse of the earnings yield will give you the PE ratio, which students have to be very careful with that. If the examiner is having his evil side, you need to know his evil side and be ready for him. Bring it on. Let's see. Now, the next perspective of determining the market value of the company is using dividends. Using dividends. So over here, the market value of the company is equal to, so normally we tend to represent the market value of the company as the price, because your price is your value. If you go for interview, we ask you how much do you want, that is your price, and your price is your value. So we can compute DO plus 1 plus G, if you remember, KE minus G. But in a normal realistic sense, when the examiner wants you to calculate the market value of the company, normally he will give you the Wacc, except for the fact that the company is solely financed by equity. Then in that case, you will say that DO 1 plus G over KE minus G. But if the company is financed by both equity and debt, then you expect the formula to be DO 1 plus G over the Wacc of the company minus G. So please, let's be mindful of these two methods. This is when the company is financed by only equity. Only equity. But this second method or formula is when the company is financed by equity and debt. Very important. Equity and debt. So in that perspective, then the market value of the company is DO 1 plus G over the Wacc minus G. So in your financial management paper, these are the valuation techniques. These are the valuation techniques. We have not added anything, neither have we subtracted any bit. This is what you need to know. Now, I decided to use this moment to give you the exposure as to what you need to expect with regards to business valuation. Now, one important thing to also note, before I proceed, I want to find out all these methods, formulas that I've exhibited on the screen. Do you have any question for me with regards to that? This is a strategic question because I want to ensure that you are fine.
Harry, please, I have a question.
Yes, ask your question.
So mine is with the last formula, the one with the dividend. So mostly in some books, I see that they add, so it's normally GO 1 plus G, and then K minus G. Then there's a plus growth at the end again. I wanted to know like what it is.
So in that context, we don't add plus growth again. Let me just explain what
Okay.
you mean, right? You are rather talking about calculating KE.
Okay.
You are rather talking about calculating KE. KE is calculated as, there are two different things, right? So what you are talking about is the calculation of KE, which we say is DO 1 plus J over PO plus J. This is what you are talking about. And this is where we add the plus J. But it is this same formula that we have made it a change of subjects to say that then let's make PO stand on its own, which is the share price. And that is what gives us the PO DO 1 plus J over the KE minus J. But we are saying that the KE should only be used if the company is solely financed by equity. Then we only have cost of equity as the cost of capital. But if the company is financed by equity and debt, then you cannot use KE Instead, you need to use the Wacc of the company because the Wacc comprises of both debt and equity. Is your question answered?
Yes, please. Thank you.
That means that we need to know the distinction between this KE formula and the PO formula. That is one takeaway that I can infer from your question. We need to master the formula between the KE and the PO. We shouldn't let the two confuse us, right? One is calculating cost of equity. One is calculating the price, and the price is the market value. Any other question for me? As I indicated, this question is strategic, right? At the end of everything, we will see why that question was asked. If there's none, then I proceed. Please, nobody see you. You are just behind your camera and you can decide to do anything by asking your question, right? So those times where it was a face-to-face section, some students will be in class and will just give me a signal that they are feeling shy in those bits. But in recent times, it's not a face-to-face class, and that I don't expect you to say that you are feeling shy, you can't ask your question and all those bits. Okay, so the section is recorded. I'll share with you thereafter so that you can still have these formulas again. What matters is that you need to master these formulas. Now, the next thing that I'm talking about is the strategies that we can come out with to avoid a hostile takeover. A hostile takeover. Hostile takeover. So what do you mean by a hostile takeover? There are some instances where we will have a particular company existing, right? For example, Jessica and Sons Limited. So we have Jessica and Sons Limited here, right? And Sons Limited here. Then we have, for example, Samuel Company. Okay? So we have Jessica and Sons Limited here. Then we have Samuel Company here. Now, Jessica and Sons Limited would want to acquire Samuel Company. Now, Jessica and Sons says that they want to acquire Samuel Company. Samuel Company also sees that when they allow Jessica and Sons to acquire them, then technically the shareholders of Samuel Company will not get anything valuable. So they don't want this takeover to happen. They don't want to allow themselves for Jessica and Sons Limited to buy them. In that regard, Samuel Company sees that takeover as a hostile takeover. It sees it as an unfriendly takeover, a takeover that they don't want and they want to avoid. In that perspective, what are some of the strategies that Samuel Company can come out with to avoid or to prevent Jessica and Sons Limited from acquiring them? What do you do? So that is what you call strategies to put in place to avoid a hostile takeover. Now, an acquisition will fail. An acquisition will fail not because the company couldn't buy that other company. When we say that the acquisition of Samuel has failed, let's say that Jessica and Sons were able to buy Samuel, and they were expecting Samuel to give the benefit that Samuel was pulling. They wanted to get that benefit. And after acquiring Samuel Company, they are not getting that benefit. In that context, they will say that the acquisition has failed. Not because they couldn't buy Samuel Company. Acquisition tends to fail when after buying the company, the benefit that we're thinking that target company can give you, you do not get that benefit. Then in that context, you say the acquisition has failed. So that is what we are trying to say. Some students tend to think that when we say acquisition has failed, it means that, oh, Jessica and Sons Limited wanted to buy Samuel Company and they couldn't buy Samuel Company. That is wrong. In finance, acquisitions tends out to fail when after acquiring that company, the benefit that we were expecting that target company to give us, we did not get that. Then we say that then the acquisition has failed. And before I come to the factors that may lead to acquisition to fail, first of all, what strategies can we employ to avoid a hostile takeover? So let's look at that context before we look at some factors that may lead to what? Failure of acquisitions. So the first one is what we call majority shareholding. The majority shareholder may decide that he doesn't want the acquisition to take place. At the end of the day, you cannot force me to sell my shares. You cannot force me. So I am having the majority shares. I said, no, I will not agree for the purchase to happen. If it happened that we're having small shares, then in that case, when we were able to convince one or two or three of us, it will force me, the majority shareholder, to also sell my shares. If it happens that we are all having less than 20%, let's say we are having 3 shareholders, and I'm having 20%, the rest are having 40-40. If we tend out to convince the 2 guys, then technically I'll be forced, I will have no other alternative than to also agree for the sale to happen. So a hostile takeover can be avoided when the majority shareholder disagree with the takeover. 2, we have something called poison pill. Poison pill. So when you talk about poison pill, it's one of the powerful defense, right? It's one of the powerful defense. But when you talk about poison pill, we are talking about a shareholder may force a pill redemption by a vote within a certain time frame if the tender offer is in all cash offer. So a poison pill means that you tend to give that company which is buying a specific condition, and if they are able to comply, fine. If they are not able to comply, so be it. So that is what you call a poison pill. Then we talk about my nice aspects, which I like it the most, and I don't forget, and my students do not forget. That is what you call the Pac-Man effect. The Pac-Man effect. So those times when you are working with a friend, and you know that friend is a bad friend, and that friend sees your younger sister, and that bad friend is interested in your younger sister, then you know that this guy cannot add any value to my younger sister, but is going to bring problems to my family and my younger sister. Then the easy way of preventing the marriage, well, this example may fail in some traditions and some jurisdictions, some countries may fail. But in a normal Ghanaian environment, if I know that that bad guy is making advances to my sister, and if it happens that he's also having a sister, I need to quickly also start making advances to his sister. So whilst you are pushing to my sister, I am also pushing to your sister. Let's see what happens. So that is what you call the Pac-Man effect. Because it cannot happen that I'll get married in your family and you also get married to my family at the same time. I get married to your sister, you get married to my sister. It cannot happen. So this is a way to avoid the takeover. So in a clear context, that is from out of the financial management context. But bringing it to the financial management context, it turns out to happen when you are trying to make processes to buy or acquire me. I also make processes to acquire you. Simple. And that's what you call the Pac-Man effect. And this was taken from the Pac-Man game. The Pac-Man game, right? There was a game like that called Pac-Man. And that is where the idea came from. I think this one you are not going to forget, right? You are not going to forget. The next one, to avoid a hostile takeover, is what we call leverage recapitalization. Leverage recapitalization. So what happened is that if I want to avoid you from buying me, what I will do is that I will go for huge debt. And in acquisition, before you can buy me, you need to pay the debts that I've created before you can buy me. So knowing that you cannot pay for that debt, automatically you have to flee. Because I've gone for huge debt that you sit down to analyze. Oh, before I can buy Samuel and Co., I need to pay off the Samuel and Co. debt that they've gone for. And here lies the case, I cannot pay for Samuel and Co. debts. Then indirectly, the takeover cannot happen. So that is what we call leverage recapitalization. Leverage recapitalization. Right. Then we can talk about something called crown jewels. Crown jewels. So there are some instances where we may have, let me just talk about this aspect first, maybe a white knight, right? So a strategy tends out to come up, and the main role is that there may be some lucrative aspect of the company, which we can decide to sell them off. Probably, if it is my face that you have seen, that you think it is beautiful or it is handsome, then what do I have to do to my face? I need to destroy that face. I just make it practical in terms of some real life situation, right? If it is a lady and the lady feels that maybe her face is beautiful, and because her face is beautiful, that's why men are just worrying her too much, then you have to do something to your face. And if that face, nice face, is no more, will you think of acquiring me? You will never think of acquiring me. So sometimes that company may have a very huge cash reserve. That cash is left there. And that's why that individual, that other company, maybe that is what Jessica and Sons Limited has seen in Samuel Co. And they want to now say that because of that, I want to buy Samuel Company. So what do? I can use that cash reserve to pay dividends. And if there's nothing, what do you do again? There's nothing you can do. Okay. Now, let me move away from the techniques that we use to avoid hostile takeover. At least I've made mention of some few, right? I want to talk about factors that lead to a takeover, which makes a takeover fail or acquisition fail. So one of them is strategic fit. Strategic fit. We can talk about cultural factors, right? Then we can talk about due diligence review not properly done. I can talk about the next bit, poor valuation. Now, if poor valuation, that is affecting what? Synergistic gains. Synergistic gains. In acquisitions or in business valuation, if you buy the company and the contribution that that company is giving to you exceeds the combination of your efforts, then we will say that a synergy has been created. So we can have revenue synergy, we can have cost synergy. So what are some of the factors that makes acquisition fail? I've already explained to you what you mean by acquisition failing. So we thought that Samuel Co could fit into Jessica and Sons Limited to give us a particular company. But the strategic fit means that the overall strategy of Samuel Co is absolutely different from that of Jessica and Sons Limited, that putting these two companies together is a problem. Now, this is based on strategy, but the next bit is cultural factors. The cultural factors means that probably Henry is a finance manager, a chief financial officer or manager in some more company, or a chief financial manager in Jessica and Sons Limited. So Henry finds himself in Jessica and Sons Limited. And he feels that because he is a boss in Jessica and Sons Limited, when it comes to the two companies which has now merged, he should still be that boss. Then it happens that he becomes the third boss or even a subordinate. Then he said, no. Then on that basis, I'm not going to give in my all. So there are going to be a lot of lackadaisical attitude coming from that. Language barriers and all those things may come up, and they are going to be classified under cultural factors. Cultural factors. Then due diligence review. What do you mean by due diligence review? Technically, just like the olden days, right? And still in current situation, if it happens that you see a beautiful guy or a beautiful lady or whoever, or handsome guy, irrespective of whatever you want to describe it, and you are interested, the logical thing is that there's supposed to be some research. There's supposed to be some analysis, right? Done. Whether you're going to do SWOT or whatever, it depends on whatever you are looking at, right? We need to look into the background of their individual to know whether that place is good to go or not to go and those bits. But in buying a company, when we don't do a proper due diligence review to know the in and out of the company, then it is at that point in time when after we have bought that company, because we didn't do a correct or a good due diligence review, we tend to get things by surprise. Then the last bit is poor valuation. The technique that you have used, for example, if you decide to use the net asset valuation technique, meanwhile this company, it is not going to liquidation, but you have used the net asset technique, then you are going to get a value which is not reasonable. And in that case, you are not getting the synergy that comes with the acquisition, and you are going to what? Be in a big problem, to be talking, be lamenting on all those bits. But you are the cause. So these are some factors that leads to acquisition failing. The last to talk about is that when we say an acquisition has failed, it does not mean that we couldn't buy the company, but it means that we bought the company, but they don't get the benefit that is attributable to that company. Good, guys. So I've been able to cover that aspect of what we need to look at. I've been able to cover that aspect that we need to look at. The question is still on the screen, and do not be worried, right? Do not be worried about the question on the screen. I want to talk about some few issues so that at least I move on, right? So the next aspect that I want to talk about, I want to move a little bit to risk management. Risk management. Now, with risk management, I want you to go back to look at how we provided the solution to Nedwin Company. If I've not gone through that past paper, then you have not helped yourself. But there's still time, right? So go through Nedwin Company. If you have lost track of that recorded section, just hit me up in a WhatsApp and just let me know, Henry, I cannot find that, and I'll give you, right? There's no, I will not be happy if you do not link up with me for me to share with you, for you to watch it, than for you to think that if I message Henry, Henry is going to. In fact, some students are having some emotional things that they want to bring when it comes to study, but when it comes to learning, don't bring your emotions. If you don't have it, I don't have it, so be it. Forget about whatever the person, because we are much interested in getting a pass, hearing from you that there was a pass, and getting evidence that there was a pass. So if we are to do anything to bring the pass, why not? We have to do it. It doesn't matter. Okay? So Nedway Company is an ideal question which will cater for issues of calculation with regards to risk management. Now, risk management is an important area, right? Risk management is an important area that we tend to use to avoid losses. We can decide to resort to the currency hedging techniques, or we can decide to resort to the interest rate hedging techniques. Now, if we decide to put ourselves into either currency or interest rate hedging techniques, what exactly are we looking at? In that context, we want to avoid the exposure. Now, either from the context of you do not want to pay more or you do not want to receive less. That is risk management. Then, with risk management, some of the derivatives that we tend to subscribe to avoid paying more or paying less, some of them are traded over the counter. That means when you say it's so trade over the counter, what do we exactly mean? You can just walk to the bank and do that negotiation. You can just walk to the bank and do that negotiation. A financial management student should know that when there exists risks, which will all the time be, unless otherwise we are all dead and every company is also dead. But so far as we are all alive and every company is still alive, there's still going to be some form of risks. So a dead company tends to have dead risks, right? Good. Even the business risks will still be there so far as we're in that industry. So some of your approaches is that, first of all, you need to identify the risks, analyze and assess the risks. You need to control the risks and monitor the risks. So risk assessment procedure or process. Risk assessment process. Let me just say process. First of all, comes with risk identification. Risk identification. Then two, risk analysis. Analysis. And assessment. Then third, we come to risk control. Then fourth, we come to monitoring risks, right? So these are the processes that we tend to go through, right? But what I want to talk about is not matters of these risks and those bit. I want to talk about the interest rate hedging techniques and the currency hedging techniques. There's a technique called leading and lagging. Leading and lagging. What do you mean by leading? Just like in recent times in Ghana now, let me just talk about it. Somewhere, was it in February? The exchange rate was around, if I stand to be corrected, right? Because I've been looking at a lot of currencies in different countries. But it was around something around maybe 16 to 17, right? 16 to 17. That is 16 or 17 Ghana cedi was equal to $1. But I tell you now, the exchange rate as we speak now in June is somewhere around 10 is it 10.13 or 10.23? So that means 10.13 Ghana cedi is equal to $1. The exchange rate has fallen. So if we're receiving money, if we're being paid in USD, then this is not a good news. It is not a good news, right? Good. Now, but what could have been done? What could have been done? So what Henry could do is that any other businesses that will create money or was to put money in my pockets, what I could have done was that, and what probably I did, because I'm just being smart, right? What I did was that before the January, we anticipated that there's going to be a fall. So what happened was that all those, let me just say, deals that could bring in some money, some travels, which could bring in some money, we decided to go for those ones as early as possible. And this was strategic, right? If we I mean, so far as you learn financial management, you need to apply financial management, not that you learn it without applying, right? So then we decided that then from June, probably you can look at travels where it is not much felt. So we decided to go by the technique called leading technique. In terms of receiving, we decided that if it is going to fall in June, then at February, March, April is bigger. Then I have to go for monies or income in those times because that will help me get more. So at this point in time where we are in June, this is when we need to make payments. Because when you're paying something now, you pay something small. So that is what we call the technique of leading. So if you know for sure, for example, that the prices of goods are going to increase, then you can go by the leading technique by buying more of those goods now. So that in future, 3 months, 4 months time, when the price increases, you can sell. That technique is called leading. But in the case of lagging, it was not ideal for people to make payments from February to May. It was not ideal because at that point in time, exchange rates were huge. So in June, now from this June up to wherever it will still come up again, this is the time to make payments. So if you are a lover of cars, right, you can now decide to be buying your vehicle at this point in time because you pay something small. So that is what you call lagging. You can wait. Lag means you wait, then you initiate an action. Then we have what do you call money market hedge? Money market hedge. And if you go through the network company, there was a question that we solved with regards to money market hedge. Now, in money market hedge, we are trading in the short term perspective over the counter, where we can exchange our currencies to reduce risk. So I want you to go through the network to see how that was done. But there's one thing also called netting. Netting. That is also a technique. In the case that if I'm going to receive in USD, I'm going to receive, let's say, $200, and I'm going to pay like $120. Then I need to go by the technical netting effect. So at the end of the day, I net and I only pay $80. So this is also done over the counter. Then we come to some techniques such as forward contracts. Forward contracts. Then we have what? Futures. Then we have options. Then we have forward rate agreement. Guys, I want you to be particular. The examiner tends to bring these things and students are all the time worried. Forward rate agreement. So I'm listing all of them for you. Then we have swaptions. Swaptions. That is swaps on options. Then we have the swap itself. So let me see how best. I think this one, there's already a document available to keep you covered. So what I'll do is that I'll share with you a document which explains all these techniques. So I think that is what will help me. Then maybe I can add colors is not so much of an issue, but know that we also have something called colors, right? So these are that, right? So these are the items that I'll need to share with you. I'll share with you. I want you to read it, add it up to the network, and you are okay with risk management. In fact, what you need for exams, you are going to be okay. So let me just take a picture of it. Then I'm going to prepare the notes and send to you. Okay? I'm going to prepare the notes and send to you. Students tends out to look at these things and it's like they are confused, they don't know what to do, and it's like some students also get, in fact, the Holy Spirit communicates to them. We have some students also like that, and they don't really put it into effect. It's like they don't care about that, right? They tend to read and they see these things, but it's like, let me just wait and let the examiner decide my fate for me, and that is very sad bit. So I'm not going to waste your time. It is now due for me to solve the NN company question. NN company question. So you can still see on the screen the following information relates to NN company. It is still important to read the main requirement. What is the requirement saying? The requirement is saying that calculate the equity value of NN Co using the following business valuation methods. So the first one is what we call the dividend growth model. The next one is the net asset value method. Then we are going to calculate the after-tax cost of debts. After-tax cost of debt. And this is one of the things that, let me see if I can share with you this bit. Just hold on for me. Let me share with you. Let me share with you. Guys, just give me some time. After this section, I'm going to be busy to work on your documents, so I don't want to waste time. So NN company, I decided to put in the question and the solution. Then I can explain why is this keeping long. Let's move on to another place. I don't know why it's keeping long. And cool. Wow. Let's give ourselves some few minutes. I think it is going to be ready. I don't know why it's like it's keeping a little bit of a time, but we are going to be fine. Uh, let me see if it's ready. Good. Then this one also ready. Good. So I've sent you the documents. You have it with you. You can open it, and that is what we are using for our section for today. Just open and keep yourself okay. Let me go back and share my screen. Where is that document? So let me share. I've sent it to you on your page. So I expect you to open it and let's roll. Great. So the requirement says that calculate the equity value of an company using the business valuation methods, dividend growth model. Dividend growth model. Now here you should know what your dividend growth model talks about, isn't it? So our dividend growth model says that our PO is equal to DO 1 plus J all over our Wacc, right? Wacc minus J. So I need to see these figures in the question. Question, where is the dividend? Question, where is the growth? Question, where is the Wacc? Then I'm able to calculate the value using what? The first what? Technique, the dividend growth model. Now let's go through the question quickly. So we have net current assets here, 101 current assets. We have inventory here to be 11, trade receivable 21, cash 10. Then we have equity, ordinary share capital 50 here. We have preference share 25, retained earnings 19. Then we have non-current liabilities 94. We have long-term borrowings 20. Current liabilities, we have trade payables, other payables. Then we have total equity and liability 143, which is equal to total asset. Asset is equal to equity plus liability. If you remember your accounting equation. So the asset is 143, the equity and liability is also 143. Now, they are saying that NN Co has just paid dividend. You see where the issues happen. They said they have just paid dividend of 66 cents per share. So I have my dividend here. So I say 66, right? I'll put here 66 cents. I can put it in cents as 0. What? Let me put it in this context. 0.60. Sorry, 0.66. That means I've converted the cent to dollars. So I have my dividend. Was there a question for me? Okay, let me move. NN Co has just paid dividend of 66 cents per share and has cost of equity of 12. Now, because the examiner said we should use the equity value, so that means that we are not expected to use the Wacc. Instead, the Wacc here is supposed to be what? KE. Please, the examiner has modified this to say calculate the equity value. If it was to say that calculate the market value, that means that we need to use the Wacc. If the company is financed by both equity and debt, as we can see, the company is financed by both equity and debt. See the non-current liabilities. This is the debt component, and this is the equity component. In that case, we would have gotten it wrong. So please, when you are solving past papers and you get here, and we are not using the Wacc, and we are using the KE, we are using the KE because the examiner said calculate the equity value. He is not asking you to calculate the overall value of the company using equity and debt. He's not saying that. So if you see today, we are saying calculate the equity value and we are using KE. The next day we say calculate the market value of the company and you still use KE, you get it wrong. I think I've explained that, and one question came from your side, from your group, with regards to that all the time I tend to see the calculation of PO when we use KE, we don't use Wacc. And this is a perfect example to answer that question. Because they said equity value, that is why we are using cost of equity. Okay, so we move on to say that we have 0.12 here. That represents the KE, which becomes the Wacc here, right? So minus G. I don't know the G. Let's proceed. So the dividends of the company have grown in recent years by the average rate of 3% per year. You remember I gave you two formulas that we use to calculate the growth rate. I said we can use the Gordon's growth model, which is calculated as this, or you can use the averaging method. So the examiner has used his averaging method, and his averaging method has given us what? 3%. Today you are happy because they have given you. Tomorrow they may ask you to calculate the G. Be ready for the examiner. The examiner, I'm not going to allow this paper to go. I need to pass this paper. Bring it on and let's see what happens. I like such a challenge. It makes exams very beautiful. You are ready to go boot to boot with the examiner because you are prepared. Not an individual who has not prepared. The individual who has not prepared is all the time shaking before. We say cowards die 10,000 times before they are dead. Because I know I've not prepared, so I'm just all the time. And I tend to tell students that, you see, when it comes to the market's point of view, sometimes it turns out to be that it's like the markets are not Christians, right? But the point is that if we have not studied, well, the examiners will not say that they are giving you free lunch. That one does not happen. It doesn't happen. We just take our energy drink, pray to God, and we just be behind the paper. You also pray. We also pray. At the end of the day, my prayer nullifies your prayer. Let's see what happens. So you have to learn, understand the thing, and pass the exams. Don't think of not learning that you go and hide somewhere you are praying to God that it should make you pass. Somebody even prays that whatever he has written, God should change it so that this form of prayer is not a good prayer. Because God also appreciates hard work, right? So the answer is $7.55. $7.55. If you use the cents, if you were to calculate it as 66, 1 plus 0.03 over 0.12 minus 0.03, you would have gotten it to be 755 cents. But if you convert cent to dollars, you divide it by what? 100. So that gives us $7.55 per share. Is there any question for me at this point in time before I go to the net asset valuation technique? Any question for me? It's good to ask questions, you know. Please ask your question. The question you want to ask, I all the time say that somebody has already asked that question some time back. If there's no question, then I proceed. Okay. So don't feel shy, guys. Don't feel shy. This is not a face-to-face section, right? So I move on to calculate using the net asset value. Now the net asset value or valuation is the total assets minus liabilities. Now, at this point in time, we were looking at net asset. Please, you have to modify, right? Over here, I think that I made a mistake. When you talk about the net, we are looking at all liabilities. So the total asset minus total liabilities. I want you to go back because the other one that I gave you, non-current assets plus current assets minus current liability, is rather capital employed, right? So we want to take all liabilities, so non-current liability. So all liabilities from the assets. So please take note of that, right? So in this context, what we have to do is that we need to go back. We need to go back here. The total assets is 143. So total assets minus total life, the total asset is 143. minus the total liabilities, which the total liabilities comprises of what? The total liabilities comprises of this long term here, okay? Long term debt over here, which is 20, and the other friend of liabilities here. So that is 20 plus 29, that gives us 49. So I come here to subtract my 20 plus 29. So that gives me 143 minus 49. And I don't know what answer we are getting. Somebody can help me out. 143 plus that, Henry, you have to be smart. So here's 43, 6, is it 94? Something like that. I think I've expressed myself in terms of what I think. Let me know what you think. 143 minus 49, is it that 94 I got? Why not? Let me just come into my answer. What do we do here? A minute. Oh, there was preference shares. Sorry, we missed the preference shares. The preference shares assume a form of liabilities, right? So we're supposed to also consider the preference shares. And any other thing. Now, the reason why we are supposed to incorporate preference shares, had it not been the examiner said that we need to calculate the equity value, guys, the preference shares would have not been important to do. So equity value, that means that determine the value of the company for only equity holders. This is a beautiful question. That's why I brought it. So over here, when you talk about equity value of the company, that means tell us the value of the company after every individual has been paid. Preference shareholders paid their portion off. Debt holders taking their portion off. What is left is the equity shareholders value. So this is why we are going to subtract the 25. I hope that explanation is right, because you're going to solve another question where the examiner will not say the equity value, and in that regard you are not going to subtract the preference share capital. Note that, right? It's not that one question you memorize one question, then you use the solution to one question to be walking around. No, it's not that. You need to understand why we are doing A here, we are doing B there, we are doing C at that point. So here, because the examiner said the equity value, determine the value of the company when the value is only left for equity holders. Then in that regard, then the net asset technique, the net asset technique is going to be the total asset minus the total liabilities plus preference shares. Okay, so that is why if you forget about the equity, in fact, everything ends up being a disaster. So the 20 plus 29 plus the 25. So that is why they got the 69 million. Right? So that is the equity value. Guys, very important. Take note of this. Take note of this friend. Take note of this friend. Okay. So let's move on. Oh, sorry. The next, so we have answered this part of the question. A part of the question, 5 marks is done. The next one is our good friend. Calculate the after-tax cost of debt of NNC. So in calculating the after-tax cost of debt, I've already informed you that your examining team is all the time interested in the third formula that we use to calculate cost of debt. In fact, it's like where the difficult issues lies. That is where examiners, we are all the time interested in examining. So we don't want the student to be learning the easy things. In fact, those things which are difficult for you, they are the ones of the examiner's interest. So tell the examiner, I know you like difficult things, and I also like to study difficult things. Because I know that is what you bring on the day of exams. We have various forms of calculating the KD. And I'm saying that in calculating KD, you can use the credit spread plus risk-free rate. You can calculate KD, the interest, 1 minus T over the market value. You can calculate KD using the internal rate of return technique. And this is what is the examiner's favorite. So you need to also love it. Don't say it's difficult because that is what your examiner likes. So you should also like it. You need to walk in the footsteps of your examiner, right? So this B aspect here, which is for 4 marks, is testing your ability to calculate cost of debt using the internal rate of return method. And guys, because we have been told that the internal rate of return method is what the examiners like, why don't you master it before you go to the exams hall? Or with this one also, you are not going to master and just go and sit down, you are writing the exams. You know that you have been told, not that you have not been told. That is what your examiners likes. That's their favorite. It should be your favorite. So don't bring any excuse to say that, oh, me it's difficult, oh, me it's so and so. The examining team does not care about your emotions with regards to whether it is difficult, it's not difficult in those bit. We need to pass the exams, irrespective of anything. So we need to prepare, master it, master it. If you practice over and over again, you'll be fine. I all the time become motivated because I've seen people with third class and pass from the university undergraduates who have completed your professional exams. I have people like that. I have people like that. So probably I'm not sure you got a pass. I'm not sure you got a third class. So you have to be confident. You can also do it. Put yourself into the game and practice, and you'll be fine. Right? Good. So calculate after tax cost of debt, KD. Now, in calculating the after tax cost of debt, what we need is first of all the information. Now, this is where we have some information here. They are saying that the long-term borrowings on NN Co consist of 7% bonds. So with bonds, what happened is that here it is a redeemable bond. 6 years. So year 1, you pay the interest. This is the nature of a redeemable bond. 6 years, you redeem it in 6 years. What do you mean by that? That means year 1, you pay the interest. Year 2, you pay the interest. Year 3, you pay the interest. Year 4, you pay the interest. Year 5, you pay the interest. On year 6, you pay the interest plus principal. And the principal is what the time quoted as 100. So what we do is that we need to remind our two friends, Modiglani and Miller propositions, where they make it beautiful that because of tax, then we should go for that, isn't it? And this is the tax rate, 25%. So we have 7% here, 1 minus T, 0.25. So that will be, instead of paying 7%, we end up paying 7 less 0.25. So that gives us 0.75 of that, somewhere around 5 point something, right? Technically, if I should just use something, I mean it's 5 point something, 4.9 plus 3.5, 0.35 should give us 5.25. I mean something like that. I'm using my mind to calculate that. I stand to be corrected, but I think 5.25 because 1 minus 0.25 is going to be 7 of 0.75, and 0.7 of 7 will give me 4.9 and 0.4. Technically something around that side, right? But I stand to be corrected. I may get it wrong, right? So the long-term borrowings of NN Co consist 7% bonds that are redeemable 6 years. So we need to bring our table at their par value. So at 100, the current X interest market price of the bonds is 103.50. That means that this is issued at a premium. At a premium. I hope by now you understand what you mean by a premium, a discount, and a par, right? You should understand those bits. So we are good to go. Let's just go and do our computation. I'm not going to worry so much. I have the answer here, solution here. Oh, excellent. I got a good answer. That is really testing my mathematics, right? So I have 7 here as the interest. Then I have 1 minus 0.25, 7 times 0.75. That gives me 5.25 per year, right? And please, don't confuse yourself thinking that this 5.25 is percentage. It is a dollar value. Now let me go back and explain to you why it is a dollar value. No, it was not even explained. So let me explain it. You see, they gave us 7.7%. 7%. Now, the value quoted of the debt, the bond, is at $100. So 7% times $100 is what is going to give us $7. But this $7 here will now, with Modigliani and Miller propositions, will now take 0.25. And that is what will give us 5.25. I've seen a lot of instances where the student think that in this computation, this 7 here is what? This 7 here is percentage. Please, it's wrong. Now, let me just create a confusion which the examining team may decide to build. What if we were to say that, I like building scenarios, I like building stories, because I know what we can do. Now, here you can see that it is 7%. So we multiply by $100 and we got $7. Then we say 1 minus 0.25. Then we got 5.25. What if this time around? So we said 7% of $100. Then we got $7. What if this time around the par value is 1,000? What happens? Beautiful example. If the par value is 1,000, that means that you have here 1035. Okay, if the par value is 1,000, then it is now going to be 7% of 1,000. Guys, be very mindful of this technique. And this will give us what? $70. So in that regard, your computation will be $70, 1 minus 0.25. And your answer will be 52.50. Be very mindful of the computation. So when students tend to think that the 7% is what is used, and that is what the 7% is what now became the 7 here, I say, no, my friend, you are wrong. That is not it. Don't even dream that that is it. Because they gave the student 7% in the question, and they could see this 7 here. They say it is that percent which has come here. No, you multiply that percentage by the par value, and that is what will give you the 7 here. It is good I have brought this issue out so that we can look at it. But per this question that we are solving now, the par value is what? The par value is 100. And if the par value is 100, then you multiply the 7% of the $100 and you get $7. And it's this $7 that you are going to use in this computation. So the examiner did not explain himself much. Know that it can go the other way around, right? So here is 7, 1, so that gave us 5.25. So guys, see our table. Check out our table. So in year 0, please, you have to put this table. So the first one, you put 0 here. Then because it is having 6 years, you say 1 to 6. Because this interest, which is $5.25, will be paid for 6 consecutive years. 6 years. And on the same 6 years, so you can see the interest is 1 to 6. So you pay the interest on the 6th year. And again, on the 6th year, you pay the principal, which is 100. So you can see the 5.25 is here and the 100 is here. Then where did we get this 103.5 from? This was the value of the debts. That was the premium. So you can see them here. Now the issue here is that the student has to predict 2 discount factors. Normally we tend to pick 5 and 4. Okay, so here we pick 5% here, and the discount factor of 5% in year 0. I'm not going to calculate that now. You know that it should be 1. The discount factor of any figure in year 0 is 1. But with the second line, because we are calculating the interest from year 1 to year 6, we don't need discount factor. Instead, we need annuity factor. So we need the annuity factor of 5% for 6 years. Do I have the annuity factor table? There's a formula that we can use though, but let me see if I can show you formulas. Yeah, I think I have the table here. I can show you, but on the day of exams, I would want to show you the reverse. Don't worry. So let me share my screen on that subject. Just keep yourself okay, right? So here we are looking at annuity factor. So this is the formula to calculate annuity. This is the formula to calculate annuity. Why am I struggling? Right. So this is the formula to calculate annuity factor. So annuity factor is 1 minus 1 plus, here the discount factor is 5%. So 0.05. For how many years? 6 years. So minus 6 all over 0.05. You will get the same answer. But here we are talking about 5% here. For how many years? For 6 years. So for 6 years. 5% for 6 years. So the answer is 5.076. Are you okay as to how I got the annuity factor? A thumbs up from you. If you're okay, how we got the 5% for 6 years. A thumbs up from you. I'm waiting. I'm not seeing any thumbs up so far. This table will be given to you and you use it for your computation. However, if it is not given to you, then you can calculate it in this form. 1 minus, into bracket, 1 plus 0.05 to the power minus 6 over 0.05. Then you get the same answer, 5.076. 5.076. Great. So let me go back to where I was. I think by now you should be fine. Where was I? Oh, still showing the other one, that bit. Okay. So I think that is fine. Sorry for wasting time a little bit. So we can see why we now have that 5.076 here. Because it is not just 1 year. We have 6 years, 1 to 6. So we don't need discount factor. Discount factor is only applicable for just 1 year, just a year. But when we have more than 1 year, we don't need discount factor. Instead, we need annuity factor. Because multiple discount factors will give you annuity factor. So you have the 5.076 here. Then on the 6th year, we rather need the discount factor. Because it's just 1 year, year 6. We need the discount factor for year 6, 5% of year 6, and that is 0.746. So 1 over 1 plus 0.05 to the power 6. And that will give us this 0.746. So we now use the cash flows to multiply the discount factors. So negative 103.5 times 1 will give us negative 103.5. Then 5.25 times 5.06 will give us 26.65. Then 100 times 0.746 will give us 74.6. So when you add them up, you get negative 2.25. Now, because we are using internal rate of return formula, we need two NPVs. So we have the first NPV to be negative 2.25. We need another. Now, because 5% gave us a negative figure, if we want to get a positive figure, we need to what? Reduce the discount factor. So the same cash flows, instead of using 5%, this time around, we are going to use 4%. So see the same cash flows. This time around, we are using 4%. So it is the same cash flows, negative 103.5, 5.25, and 100. You multiply by the, for year 0 is 1 discount factor. So times, that gives us this. Then 5.25, we need the annuity factor of 4% for 6 years. And that will give us 5.242. Okay? Or you can say the annuity factor equals 1 minus 1 plus 0.04 to the power negative 6, all over 0.04. You still get the same 5.242. Then the discount factor of that 4%, 1 plus 0.04 on the 6th year is going to give us 0.790. So you use the cash flows to multiply the annuity factor and the discount factors, then we will get a net present value of 3.2. Now, mind you, we said that in calculating internal rate of return, it is the lower rate plus the NPV of the lower rate over the NPV of the lower rate minus the NPV of the higher rate times the higher rate minus the lower rate. Now, in this regard, 5% and 4%, which of them is the lower rate? 4%. Then we need the NPV of the lower rate, that which is the 4%, which is 3.02, over the same 3.02 minus the NPV of the higher rate. The higher rate is 5%, and that gave us negative 2.25. So we come here, so it is negative, that will give you plus 2.25 times the higher rate minus the lower rate. Who do not understand and he or she tends to have a question, please feel free, ask your question. Ask your question. Don't be scared, right? The question you want to ask, I've told you, a lot of settings, 10 years experience in providing tuition. Every setting. Somebody has already asked that question a long time ago. So why are you scared? Unmute yourself, come clear with your question, and let's move. So in going through, I think the examiner went through and he got the answer to be 4.6%. Now, one of the issues that I have encountered throughout my experience or exposure with students is that, please, when calculating, though I added the 4% here, don't change the 4% to 0.04. Don't change that. Keep it as 4. And 5%, you keep it as 5 and use it in the computation. I've seen some students calculating, maybe you may have even gone through that problem, where they are calculating 4%, they go and calculate the 4% as 0.04. No, keep it absolute as 4. And let's move. So that is why you can see that even the examiner, he was using 4 here. He was using 4. Then he moves through. You'll get the same answer if you decide to go through like that. So it is 4.6. So whatever answer you now get, you just add percent to it. That's all. Whatever answer you get, just add percent to it. Now let me a little be like a mathematician, somebody who has done hard maths. So 3.02 over 3.02 plus 2.25. Let me just throw more light. 5 minus 4. So what happened is that because addition is commutative, let me not say that, it will get somebody confused. So what we do is that we are going to solve this aspect. Okay? Then we add it to 4. So first of all, I need to deal with this side. 5 minus 4. This side is 1. So I have here to be 1. And 1 times any number is that same number. So I now have 4 plus 3.02. Then if I add 3.02 to 2.25, that gives me 5.27 times 1. And it's still the same answer, isn't it? So this gives me 4 plus 3.02 over 5.27. Although, for example, don't calculate it like this, right? But I'm showing you to explain what I mean. So it is this 3.02 divided by 5.27. That is what will give you the 0.06. So you add that 0. So it's 4 plus technically 0.5 something. So that is 0.6. So 4 plus 0.6 will give you 4.6. And then just add your percent to it. I'm just trying to make it a little bit, explanatory. If you think it is going to be a problem, please use your scientific calculator. Punch everything, press equal to bam, and move. Here, individuals who have been using their phones much and they have not been using the calculators. When you get here, when you say press or punch cube roots, they're in trouble. I've seen some ladies like that. Forgive me, I only, per my experience, I've only seen that happening to ladies. So if I'm saying ladies, I know why I'm talking about that. They can do everything on the phone, but how do you press cube roots? It's a problem. And we can only go through this bit when we tend to practice more, right? Do not be scared. If you have any issue with regards to that, just let me know, right? After all, we are all introduced to these calculators, right? You don't need to do elective maths or hard maths before you become conversant with this. You can just go through, right? Okay, so what happened is that we are moving on to look at the next bit where we are going to calculate Wacc, right? And in calculating Wacc, that was the aspect here. So A done, B done. C says calculate the weighted average cost of capital for NN Q, weighted average cost of capital. Now note that per this question, we have preference shares. We have what? Equity. Then we have long-term borrowings. So the work that we are going to calculate for this NNQ, we have three sources of capital: equity, debt, and preference shares. So that is what we are going to do now. It's quite complicated, but we will still deal with it. Now, so the examiner has given us the issues already. If you remember, we need to calculate the cost of debt, which we already have it. And that is what we computed. If you remember, our KD, we've got our KD to be 4.6. So far, I have my KD to be 4.6. Okay? But I don't know the issues surrounding cost of what? Equity. Cost of equity, the examiner gave it to me here, also as what? 12%. Then what do I need? I need the cost of preference shares. The cost of preference shares. So let's see the issues surrounding the computation of cost of preference shares. I have this 4.6, if you remember. That is what I use the internal rate of return to get. The KE is given to me as 12. The KP, cost of preference, is what I'm now going to calculate. In calculating the cost of preference, a cost of preference is calculated as, let me just come here. The preference shares of NNCO have a nominal value of 50 cents per share and pay an annual dividend of 8%. Okay, so the nominal value is 50 cents. So in that case, I have 0.50 times 8, all divided by the price of a preference. And the price of a preference is quoted as what? Is quoted as 67. Right? Is quoted as 67. So here I'll also say divided by 0.67. Guys, note that the 50 cents I've converted it to 0.50. Then the 67 cents I've converted it to 0.67. To convert cent to dollar, you divide it by 100. So 50 cents is 50 over 100. That gives us $0.50. So this is my cost of preference. See how I computed it. It is the nominal value times the annual dividends divided by the price of the preference. So what answer are we getting? 0.50 of 8 will give me 4. So I have something like 4 here, technically, divided by 0.67. What answer are we getting? Can somebody help? 4 divided by 0.67. Is somebody giving me the answer? I have Udell here. I have Abel Salembe.
I think
Uzia.
5.97.
Come again.
5.970.
So technically, I can say it is 6%. So I have the KD now. I have the KE. I have the KP. Now, because the company is financed by equity, debt, and preference, I need to calculate their KE, KP, KD. So this Wacc formula is going to be as the Wacc is going to be the KE times the value of E over value of E plus value of P plus value of D. You see, it's going to be lengthy. KD 1 minus T times value of D, value of E plus value of D plus value of P. Then the last one, KP times value of P, value of E plus value of D plus value of P. So this is the formula. So I'm trying to figure out the element of the formula one by one. The first one is KE. I have it to be 12. The next one is KD. I have it. But this one is already after tax. So let's be mindful. It is already after tax. So you don't subtract tax from it again. So that's why the examiner here on B say after tax cost of debt. So if tax is already taken out, don't come and take tax out of it again. So all this aspect here is 4.6. Be mindful. Then the cost of preference, I have it to be what? 6. So technically, what am I left with? I need to know the value of equity, value of preference, and value of debt. The answer is going to be easy to do. The most important thing is how to calculate my KE, KD, KP. The rest is to know the value of equity, value of preference, value of debt. And that ends it. Okay? But here, the examiner made it a little bit complicated. Okay? So let's just be ready for the examiner. So what is the value of equity? So the value of equity, let's go there. The value of equity, they said the price, the current price is 8.30 per share, right? 8.30 per share. 8.30 per share. Then we have the nominal value to be 50 what? Cents. To be 50 cents. Be mindful of this, right? So it's 50 cents. The equity nominal value is 50 cents. Now, when you come here, the value of the equity, please be mindful. This can come up for you to calculate and get 1 mark. So I have the ordinary capital, and the nominal value is 50 cents, which is $0.5, right? $0.50. So if I want to get the number of shares, the number of shares is going to be 50 over 0.5. Divided this 50 here by the nominal value will give you the number of shares. And if I get the number of shares, I now multiply by the price per share, which is 8.30. Is there any question for me? Dividing the 50 here by the nominal value. The nominal value was given down in the question, right? So 50 over 0.5 times 8.3. And that should give us 50 over 0.5 is like 100. So 100 times 8.3 will give us like 830. But these are in millions. So 830 what? Million. So I now know the value of E. I need to look for the value of D and the value of what? P. Okay? So now let's go to the preference. The preference is quoted also here as 25. Let's see the nominal value. The nominal value is also 50 cents. And the price per share at the moment is what? The price per share is what? 67 cents. So that should be easy peasy also to do, right? So the value of preference is 25 over 0.50 times the price per share. Divided the 25 by 0.5 will give you the number of preference shares. Then multiply by 0.67. So I don't know what answer you get. So I know the value of E, the value of P is left with the value of D. The value of D is the value of the debts. Now, the value of the debt is the long-term debts, which they have given to us here as 20. Now, can you give me the 25 over 0.5, which will give me 25 over 0.5 is 50. 25 over 0.5 is 50 shares times 0.67 price. What answer are we getting? 25 over 0.5 is 50.
You get
Hello?
33.5.
You get
get
what?
33.5.
Oh, excellent. So
33.5.
33.5, yeah, something like that is correct, because 50 times 0.5 is even at that point. All right, that's good. So we have 33.5 in million here. So I have the value of debts. Sorry, I have the value of equity to be 830 million. I have the value of preference to be 33.50. Please be mindful. Don't, when we are solving it together, you might start to see it to be easy. This is an easiest question. No, don't consider it that way. Because we are solving it together, you see it to be easy. When you go back and you are solving it alone, you see that this one is a different ball game. So that means that the fact that you are solving with Henry, and Henry is the one leading and he's talking, and he's getting the answers right, does not mean that you can also do this exactly the same thing. You have to go back, reset yourself, do it over and over again, and ensure that you have mastered it. You cannot believe to say that things are 100%. And that is the myth that comes with tuition. When you are doing it with the students see it to be easy, to the point that most of them will not even revise it the day before they sleep. They think that, oh, it is easy. Let me just go. This, because you're doing it, Henry, you see it to be easy. It is not as easy as you see it. We can bring the same question in an exams, and some students will get it wrong. And that's what I've been saying, that even when you tend to give more questions and you really repeat a question that you have already solved before, you tend to see some students still getting 0. That means that though we solved it together, they thought that they are Henry and they have solved it and they are okay. But when they meet it with figures even change slightly, or even the same question, they don't get it right. So please do not think that things are easy like that, right? Because you are solving it with me, you see it to be easy, but it's not easy. Practice over and over again. Now, the value of debt is the only thing that I'm left with. With the value of debt, the examiner quoted it here that the premium is what? 103.5 at par of 100, right? So I'll say that it is 103.5 over 100 times the value of the debt, which here is what? 20. So 103.5 over 100 times 20. What answer are we getting? So technically, so this 20 times 100 will even give me still 20 here. 20. Can you give me the answer? And 3.5 is 7. So something like that. 20.7. I think something like that. It's okay, because 20 of 1 is 20. So this is the same as mathematically. Forgive me, I'm doing mathematics here. I'm saying 100. 103.5 over 100 is 1.035 times 20. So I'm using 20 to multiply 1. 20 times 1 is 20. Then 20 times 0.035 is 7. So, sorry, 0.7. So I have 20.7. I stand to be corrected, but I think that the mathematics is okay using simple algebra, right? So I have this also to be the value of the debts. Now, I have all the ingredients that it takes to now calculate my Wacc. Let me just go and see what the examiner gave us. Good. So here, oh, excellent. So we have this 6% here. We have this 830 here. We have this 33.5 JC gave us. Then 20.7 Sonia gave us. So the only thing is to put in the figures. So the examiner decided to calculate the denominator, that value of E plus value of D plus value of P. He decided to calculate the total, and he said it's what? 884.2. If you don't like that format, then why don't you come here and say my Wacc equals KE you already know your KE to be what? 12%, right? Times the value of equity. We got the value of equity to be 830. So if we're not conversing, I say 830 over 830, but it's going to be a waste of time. And the value of preference is 33, so 33.5 plus the value of debts. You got 20.7. So that ends it for equity. Then KD is 4.6. KD minus T, 1 minus T is 4.6. The value of debt is 20.7 all over 830 plus 33.5 plus 20.7 plus KP, cost of preference. We got the cost of preference to be 6. So times the value of preference, which is 33.5 all over 830 plus 33.5 plus 20.7. You can go through this illustration, you still get the same answer. But the examiner was just smart to just put all this as one figure. All this as one figure to avoid worries. And he said that the Wacc, so let me count that a little bit. So he said that his Wacc is equal to 12 times 830 over, then he has summed up all these figures. This 830 plus 33.5 plus, he said is what? 884. 884.5. Okay? Plus 4.6. That is the KD1 minus T cost of debt, and the value of debt is 20.7. All over 884.5. Then the last bit, 6 times 33.5 all over 884.5. So he said his answer is 11.6%. So that is his weighted average cost of capital. Any question for me? Hello? Any question for me? It's like my guys doesn't want to ask questions. What is happening? Hello? Okay, I move. Please, you have any question, don't hesitate. Yes.
I understand. We understand right now. So when we solve it and we have any challenges, we'll let you know.
Yes, please, I want you to be solving the questions we have already solved again. Because when we are going through like that, in fact, you tend to see it to be easy, the easiest on the earth, right? But do it again, the question, try to resolve it again. You see that there are some weaknesses. So, how come? The question looks simple, but because we are solving it with Henry, right? So B done, C done. D says that explain. These are the easy maths question. And this one is coming from efficient market hypothesis. Efficient market hypothesis. Explain the concept of market efficiency and distinguish between strong form efficiency. Now, another form of this question which could have been examined is when we were to talk about the pecking order theory. Pecking order theory. Okay? B, you could have been talking about capital rationing. Okay? We could have also been talking about the theories of Wacc. Or we could have asked you to say factors that influences sources of funds. Now, these are some of the questions that the examiner can be asking you. The E part of the question. The E part of the question is that which we don't expect it to be examined, but you just have to know it. It is nothing to do with Wacc and business valuation, but it has to do with MPV. when determine the value of a project to know whether we are to enter into it or not, sometimes some projects may give you a negative NPV, say negative 20. But that project may have something called rare options, which are some benefits that that project tends to have. And when it determines the value of that options, it may give you, let's say, even 1,000. Then in effect, the NPV will give us 980. So there's some question that the examiner may ask you. At every point in time, when an NPV is negative, should we reject the project? You will say no. It is not every time when a project is having a negative NPV that we reject the project. In a simple rule, we know that when an NPV is negative, we reject the project. But before we reject such a project, let's check whether that project is having rare options. If it is having rare options, then we need to determine the value of that option to be added to the NPV. So a notable question which featured was that the examiner asked the question, should all projects which are having negative NPV be rejected? Discuss. Now your answer is that in a normal context, if the project is having a negative NPV, we need to reject that project. However, if that project is having rare options, we need to determine the value of the rare option and add that value of that rare options to the negative NPV. And if the overall net effect is still negative, then we reject such a project. Another context is that when a project is having a negative NPV and that project is in joint demand with another project which is having a positive NPV, you should not reject such a project, because though it is having a negative NPV, its existence is what is making you enjoy that positive NPV. So this is the answer that you give to the examiner. I'm trying to say that instead of getting this D question here, which relates to efficient market hypothesis, there could have been a question relating to pecking order theory for you to answer. That means you need to revise your pecking order theory. There could be a question to feature under capital rationing, soft capital rationing, hard capital rationing, which we want you to know and revise your hard capital rationing, your soft capital rationing. Then the theories of Wacc, the factors that influence the source of funds. These are questions that we have looked at over and over again. That is an information to the students who is prepared and want to give the question, the exams, a bash. Explain the concept of the market's efficiency and distinguish, pregnant question, and distinguish between strong form efficiency and semi-strong form efficiency. Here, the question requires you to do two things. First of all, explain the concept of efficient market hypothesis. It doesn't end there. Distinguish between strong form and semi-strong form efficiency. They are strong form, semi-strong, and weak form, right? Overall. Capital rationing, we have soft capital rationing, hard capital rationing. Soft capital rationing, hard capital rationing. Internal capital rationing, external capital rationing. If I have not revised that, please, guys, go back and do a good job. So the D part says that market efficiency is usually taken to refer to the way in which ordinary share prices reflect information. Farmer, that's the one who invented efficient market hypothesis. Farmer defined an efficient market as one in which share prices fully and fairly reflect all available information. So the information available is what determines the value of a share price. That is efficient market hypothesis in brief. A semi-strong, so this aspect of he has answered one part of the question. So part one of the question has been answered. Part two say distinguish between semi-strong and strong form. So you need to answer the question. Don't beat about the bush. A semi-strong form efficient market is one where share prices reflect all publicly available information, such as past sharing price movement, published company annual reports, and analyst reports in the financial press. A strong form market is one where share prices reflect all information, whether publicly available or not. It includes insider information. This form is a strong one, but it doesn't normally exist. Share prices would reflect, for example, takeover decisions made in private board meetings. So when they talk about weak form, the weak form only consider issues of information which are already available in published financial statements, published FS. That's weak form. Then when it comes to semi-strong, semi-strong, it comprises the weak form, which is the available published financial statement plus analyst financial report. Then the semi-strong comprises of the available published information, analyst report plus insider information. For example, an insider information is when we meet to discuss a takeover decision in a private board meeting that nobody's there. But still, it could be that your brother or sister, your husband, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your auntie, granny, or whoever tends to leak that information to you. And you capitalize on that information to make something. So these are the issues about efficient market hypothesis. Efficient market hypothesis. Let's be very mindful of that so that we keep ourselves okay. All right. Any question for me? If there's none, then I'll just proceed to talk about my last words. Then I end the session for today. But you have a beautiful thing, a message coming from Eugene Farmer. Eugene Farmer. He is the one who introduced efficient market hypothesis. Eugene Farmer. It is not mandatory that you know his name, right? But you can just pick it up. Eugene Farmer. He's the one who developed that, and he discovered that in 1970. 1970. Okay. My last words, if there's nothing for me, I would want to refer you to some few issues, some few updates. For NPV question, then go through Wacc code. Wacc code. For risk management, go through Nedwin. Is W. Nedwin. For working capital, resort to WXZ. Is it WXZ? There's one past paper like that. WXZ. WX, is it SQZ? I've forgotten that question, but it's of this form. I'll search for it. Cool. And let you know. And issues of business valuation, resort to the illustration that I gave you. So today's summary before I started the lecture, right? So that you can look into it. For Wacc, resort to the question that we solved. I've forgotten the name of the question, but we solved a question where we talk about asset beta, talking about hex code. Hex code. I've forgotten that type of question. Hex, right? Where we talk about asset beta, equity beta, and you can look at today's question, NN code. Also, it's okay. These two questions will keep you okay with, because it brings all the issues. Just that this NN co is not talking about asset beta, equity beta. You get it? But that question that we solved, was it hex co? Let me see if I can get the name. Don't worry. Wacc. Let me see. Just give me some moment. Yes, pecking order. I gave you a note on pecking order. So. Don't worry. Be happy. Documents. Just give me a minute. To be sad for me if I don't know, I get the name. So, fence school. Was it fence school?
Yeah, it
Good.
was
So
fair.
that was fence school. Yeah, that was fence school. Fence school. Yeah, that's the question that I was talking about. So fence school. So if you combine fence school with NN co, you should be fine with working capital. Sorry, you should be fine with weighted average cost of capital. Sorry. You should be fine with weighted average cost of capital. Right? So, guys, there have been a lot of questions that we have solved so far. You can start from the first page on WhatsApp. You can start. If you have not been deleting messages, you can start from the top. Then you see those things. You can be revising over and over again. But if a student is to call me today and he says that I want to at least prepare myself for the exams, these are the topic areas and the recorded sections that I would say that the student should focus on to at least to get some mark, but not necessarily getting a huge mark for passing, like 50%. But the student can, if only the student understand, the student can get around maybe 40 something, right? But with other additional work done, the student should excel. Guys, I believe in you. You have to work hard. You need to concentrate this last moment. I do not want you to be moving around. You need to time yourself. If you are hitting 12 hours of a study a day, you have to do that. Don't be learning 2 hours, 3 hours, then you think that it's okay. Don't do that. We need to go all out and ensure we get things done. Thank you very much for joining the section. I appreciate your effort. Keep getting the job done. And I believe at the end of the day, we are going to smile. I cannot wait to get to the touchline and celebrate your passes like CR7. Have a very good evening and bye-bye to you.